In the 1950s, the Philippine economy developed rapidly, with its GDP per capita ranking second in Asia, only behind Japan. The Philippines was home to Asia's first airline with aviation business, Philippine Airlines, established on February 26, 1941. Even the first aircraft of Japan Airlines was leased from Philippine Airlines. At that time, Manila, the capital of the Philippines, was known as the Little New York of Asia due to its rapid and comprehensive economic development, which led to the establishment of the headquarters of the Asian Development Bank there. The Philippines was even once referred to by Westerners as the Asian model. However, what exactly happened that caused the stagnation and even decline in the growth of the Philippines, leading to an economic model that relies heavily on exporting labor? Today, let's take a look at the development history of the Philippines. Historically, the Philippines experienced two periods of prosperity. One was during the age of geographical discoveries, where the Philippines, as the center of maritime Asia, was a necessary route for many major fleets. As a transshipment hub, the Philippines had a greater advantage than Japan or India at that time. Chinese porcelain, tea, Southeast Asian spices, and even South American gold were traded here. The modern rise of the Philippines began after the end of World War II. The United States recognized the full independence of the Philippines under the condition of being allowed to establish military bases there. After the war, industries such as pond culture, tobacco, and food began to develop rapidly in the Philippines, followed by infrastructure, timber, rubber, and shipping industries. The outbreak of the Korean War brought the Philippines the effect of order transfers, and continuous investments by American companies in the Philippines spurred a second wave of economic development. Why did the United States place such importance on the Philippines at that time? Partly because of the rapid development of the Philippine light industry and the strategic location mentioned earlier, which also gave the Philippines an advantage in shipping conditions. Therefore, after World War II, the United States paid considerable attention to the Philippines, continuously providing professional training for Filipinos, including food processing, welding, and electrical work, to ensure that foreign companies could have access to high-quality and inexpensive labor. As the Vietnam War approached, the Philippines once again received orders from the United States, marking the peak of the Philippines' growth. In 1953, Japan's GDP per capita was $222, ranking first in Asia, while the GDP per capita of the Philippines was $208, ranking second in Asia. Throughout the 1950s, the Philippines maintained its position as the second highest GDP per capita in Asia until the mid-1960s, when it began to decline. By 1960, the GDP per capita of the Philippines had grown to $254, while South Korea's was $158 and China's was $89. But Japan had already pulled far ahead with a GDP per capita of $478. Entering the mid to late 1960s, the Philippines began to decline rapidly. Some analysts believe that this was due to the failure to properly address land issues in the Philippines. During the 1950s and 1960s, Taiwan and South Korea both carried out land reforms that distributed large amounts of land to farmers. This enabled farmers to be self-sufficient and boosted agricultural production. In contrast, the Philippines did not undertake land reform, resulting in farmers lacking land and being dependent on landlords, which led to low production efficiency. Another factor was political. The corruption during the Marcos era led to an economic decline in the Philippines. In the 1970s, Marcos began his rule and implemented a series of political and economic reforms, including martial law, suppression of opposition, and extensive infrastructure development. However, these reforms did not address the fundamental issues in the Philippines and led to the country being heavily in debt and its economy in trouble. The corruption in the Marcos government further exacerbated the economic decline. After the fall of the Marcos government in 1986, the Philippines began economic reforms, including liberalization and attracting foreign investment. But these reforms did not immediately yield significant results. In the 1990s, with globalization, Filipino labor became one of its main export products. The Philippine government encouraged its citizens to work overseas and support the economy through remittances. This somewhat restored the Philippine economy, but also made it overly dependent on remittances from overseas labor. By the 21st century, the Philippine economy began to gradually improve, especially in the service industry and in outsourcing. The main clients were American companies, as the Philippines had widespread English education, low labor costs, and close ties and cultural similarities with the United States. On one hand, this presented an opportunity for the Philippines. On the other, remittances from overseas Filipinos continued to support the economy, along with changing consumption habits of young consumers, creating a new situation. From the perspective of foreign direct investment, the Philippines saw some positive changes. According to a report published by the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development in January of this year, while foreign investment in major Southeast Asian countries declined in 2020, Malaysia by 68% to $2.5 billion, Singapore by 37% to $58 billion, Indonesia by 24% to $18 billion, and Vietnam by 10% to $14 billion. The Philippines experienced a 29% increase to $6.4 billion. Whether this influx of foreign investment will continue to rise remains uncertain, but it is clear that the Philippines is stepping out of its past mire. In 1960, rural population in the Philippines accounted for 70% of the total, with urban population at 30%. With urban industrial and commercial development, by 2019, rural population decreased to 53%, while urban population increased to 47%. It is estimated that by 2030, urban population in the Philippines will exceed 50%. Urbanization will further improve, starting with the need to enhance education quality. As long as there are sufficient job opportunities, the market size can continue to expand, but it may take another decade or two to see results. The Philippines still faces many challenges with its infrastructure, education, and health systems, and the wealth gap continues to widen. Thus, despite some economic progress, achieving sustainable development remains a challenge, especially in education, as surveys indicate that the Philippines has the lowest average IQ among Asian countries. In summary, the development of the Philippines has experienced ups and downs, from being an economic miracle in Asia to economic decline, and then to gradual recovery. The economic development of the Philippines has been influenced by various factors, including changes in the international environment, adjustments in domestic political and economic policies, and challenges of globalization. Whether the Philippines can achieve long-term stable economic growth will require more effective policy adjustments and reforms by the government. The Philippines is on its way to regaining its glory. Thank you for watching. I am Serena. See you next time.